Hello everyone. I'd like to look at how to come up with good ideas today, how to develop design processes that work for you. And first let's look at some issues connected with design. For example, design methods don't guarantee success. If you look at the Apollo missions like 1 and 13 and the Columbia and Challenger disasters, you can see some of the most sophisticated design processes out there fail. They have a chance to fail. So in many ways, the way you design things is the right way to design things. And if we look at actual products, we think about their backstories being part of them. So for example, some things are just great inventions. They work really well, they're ingenious, and they enamor us in some way. Some things are a little more pedestrian. They kind of do a job, but they're not really glamorous. And we can be attracted by the backstory, however. So for example, if I give you a sketch made by my daughter, when she was young anyway, you might not find it very valuable. I would find it really valuable. Whereas if I gave you kind of the rough sketch, didn't look so good, but it was sketched by Leonardo da Vinci, well then you might find it very attractive. So there's this kind of communications in designs that comes through where we look at the provenance, who made it, where did it come from, and that has a certain value too. So when you look actually what is good design, it can take a couple of different flavors, from being ingenious to having a real aesthetic allure to having some kind of connection with history that we find appealing. And probably the most sophisticated designs, the most interesting and dramatic ones are the ones that reach way out there. So much so that they're part of the system. So it's kind of like real estate development, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So GPS, for example, is an example of a really wonderful design in the sense that you don't get a GPS system with one satellite, or 2 satellites, or 3 satellites, or 30 satellites. You need a lot of satellites to start. And you still don't have a GPS system. You need receivers and processing technology that can take the data and do something with it. And then you need a customer base. So if you have all the technology and nobody wants to use it, you still don't have a system. But when you put all that together, you have technology, an installed system, and a customer base, you get really sophisticated and leapfrog types of designs that really change the world. And of course you see that in a more everyday manner with cars. If you have a really fast car, that doesn't really matter if you don't have a road and gasoline and other such infrastructure. So that's really the most otherworldly type of design. And again, it's kind of like real estate development. If somebody sees a plot of land that's a bit run down, has some, no great interest, maybe an old service station is there or something, and they have a vision that could make that land could be turned into a foundation for a good hotel or a good amusement park. They get funding for it, they make it happen. That's really kind of the parallel to these sort of great design leaps where you have this deep infrastructure developed. So that's sort of the different story. History makes a judgment on design as well. So if you look at the Roman Colosseum, it's been maintained. Why is that? Whereas some kind of rundown old house that gets torn down as soon as the land is needed makes a different type of statement. So you have history speaking to us as well as giving some kind of valuation for design. So that's just an interesting reflection. And my approach to design generally is to design something in some format by sketching it, mentally conjuring it up, talking to people about it, but then building it kind of quickly in some kind of rough and ready way, a low fidelity model that lets you think about how this would work and how this wouldn't work, and then modify it. So kind of going quickly to the stage of getting some physical build. So you have something that you can talk to other people about, and you can actually try things and see how they work. So that design, build, and modify cycle is kind of my approach to things in the world of design. It's much more fun to stay in the world of pencil sketches, CAD, that sort of thing, because you can sit there and drink your coffee and kind of relax and generate interesting ideas. And of course it's a very important step, but making it physical is important too. And that's not just 3D printing, because 3D printing requires STL files and that takes a lot of time. So just kind of rough and dirty models will tell you a great deal of things. And innovation is needed because there's a lot of changes around us. There's changes in population, the demographic of the population. We live in the information age where things cascade quickly, and the way we interact with people changes quickly. There's also just raw materials. Food and energy are also constrained in a way currently, and innovation can help move those forward. So there's important motivators for innovation and design that are important to society and can make this world a pleasant way to a pleasant place to live. And there's an old adage that there's nothing more dangerous than a person with only one idea. So when we look at design, innovation, how to come up with good ideas, we're specifically looking at how do we come up with good ideas. How do we be creative and express that human passion to create something distinctively human, and what do we do with it? So one of the key issues is not to accept the first answer to a design problem as being the only solution. It's sort of how we're conditioned. If you take a test, there's a correct answer, and you find it quickly and move on. In design, it's a lot more amorphous. So you say, well, here's a problem. Let's look for a variety of solutions. The way I look at it is I basically push into three corners of inquiry. One is things that are very complex, and those are areas people don't like to go to often. So what's a real complex solution, real elaborate and complex solution? Another is what's a very beautiful solution, aesthetically beautiful. And then finally, what's a real practical / ergonomic solution? And if you force yourself to go into those categories, I think it helps. So for example, you typically want to design something that's very practical, it's ergonomic, it works well, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. But if you pursue things that are beautiful, you might find some values to that help your design. If you look at something that's really complicated, which takes you into a territory that very few dare to tread, that might give contributions to your practical idea that you wouldn't recognize at first. So I think those three, namely the complex, the beautiful, and the practical, we'll call it, are a good way to pursue ideation, this kind of brainstorming thing. Sometimes I call it exotic too, ideas that just seem way out there. And it's very important to go way out there and then come back. If you don't go way out there, even to areas where the technology doesn't exist, or you're not really sure how to approach that whole field of inquiry, you don't really know what's out there, but you're talking about space aliens and hovercrafts and such. It's good to go out there. You got to come back in the commercial sense, but if you don't go out there and explore, you really kind of put walls around yourself, and that's part of the innovation. So there's different types of innovation. I mentioned before GPS. So the advanced design, kind of blue sky design, is when you say, I would like to do something for which there's no technology and there's no technique in doing it. There's no infrastructure at all, and you start with nothing. So if you say, I'm going to cure cancer, don't know how to do it, but I'm going to make it happen, I'm going to throw resources at it, it might work and it might not. But it's the boldest and most advanced type of design. When you're saying, here's a problem that people don't even know exists. So for example, getting information from the world and getting it right in front of you. If you look at that, people might not realize that they want to have access to as much information as is out there. And you say, you know what, I can make a system that will develop a taxonomy of inquiries, or it will curate suggestions that will present people with information that might be helpful to them. I mean, this is advanced design, so it's going way out there where the technology doesn't exist and people don't even know that they want it. So in several hundred years ago, people didn't know they wanted a car. Now we want a car. Then you have more pedestrian things where you do routine designs, where you design something that you've designed many times, people want it, and that's kind of the other end of the design range. So you've got the blue sky stuff, advanced design, and you've got the routine design. Now routine design is a lot lower stress because you really go into it knowing what's going to happen, you know the results, and that can be satisfying. It can be boring though. I've been down that road and it can be boring after a while. So it's fun to work with both, whereas advanced design is really tough. I mean, you're talking about things that are sort of the Elon Musk realm of inquiry, getting tourists up into space and that sort of thing. So when you go through the practical process of design, it's good to develop ideation sketches, and as I mentioned, it's good to pursue these kind of ranges, go way out, come back, and then take the sketches, come up with some kind of rough model, some low fidelity model that you can share in the community and actually try, because you'll find that often you're very disappointed when you take your sketches and make them real, and that's an important step. And then modify them. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Now there's other techniques such as mind maps where you put a bunch of words out that are associated with a product or design. There's affinity diagrams where you take a lot of the raw ideas from a lot of people and you parse them and identify themes within those. There's storyboards where you can add a chronological element to your inquiry, so you can say, well, here's how the product is used over time, so it's a comic strip. Or you can do an experience/journey map where you're saying this is a customer's experience with existing designs, this is what they don't like, the pain points, and here are the pleasure points. So you can use a storyboard to present that as well. So there's kind of traditional design tools that can help you with the whole process of coming up with great ideas. So go out there, make great ideas.